In our last discussion, we talked about circumstances versus thoughts. That discussion is a great segue into what I want to talk about today. I want to give you one of the greatest tools I've been given. It's called the self-coaching model and was created and taught to me by a woman named Brooke Castillo. I believe it's the best and easiest way to clearly understand truths that have been around since the beginning of time. It's helped me see how I'm creating the life I'm experiencing. There are 5 parts: the circumstance, thought, feeling, action, and result. I'm going to give you a brief explanation of each. So the very first line of the model is the circumstance line, and it is a fact that most everyone would agree on. Like, for instance, something that someone said or something that happened is often out of our control. So it's anything that happens in our life we can put on the circumstance line. The second line is the thought line. We can have hundreds of thoughts about one single event or one circumstance. But when we run a model, we only put one of the thoughts we're having about our circumstance on this line. The third line is the feeling line, and it is where we put the main feeling that is caused by the thought that we wrote in the thought line. The fourth line is the action line, and it's where we write all the things we do or don't do when we feel that certain way. And finally, the fifth line is the result our actions are creating in our life, and it always ties back to our thought. If you think about it, most everything in life fits into one of these 5 categories. When we can simplify life by inserting the things we experience into the model, it makes it easy to understand why we feel the way we do, why we act the way we do, and why we have the results we have in our life. I want to show you how the model works. So to demonstrate, let's say I come to the end of a long day and notice that my son didn't do any of his chores. I'm not pleased with this, and I'm having all kinds of negative feelings about it. So I decide to run a model. In the circumstance line, I would write, "Son didn't do his chores today." Then in the thought line, I would have a whole bunch of thoughts that I'm having about that circumstance, but I'm just going to choose one thought. So I put on that line, "He is so irresponsible." Then I go to the feeling line. How do I feel when I have the thought, "He is so irresponsible"? Well, in my feeling that I have is angry. So that's where I put the word angry. So what do I usually do when I get angry? The next is the action line, and I'm going to write all the actions that I can think of that I do when I'm angry. So I put, my face and body look tense, my heart races, I feel hot, I raise my voice, and I might lecture. I probably take away more privileges than I should, and I threaten. My result is that I'm not acting responsibly and like the parent I want to be either. Without running a model, I might believe that my son not doing his chores is what's causing my anger. But I can think of other times when my kids haven't done their chores, and I wasn't really that upset. We know circumstances don't cause the way we feel. It's always our thought. So it's that thought, "He's so irresponsible," that is making me feel angry. When I haven't been upset other times when my kids haven't done their chores, it's because I'm probably having a different thought, like, "They were so busy today," or "I know that they're having some real challenges right now. I wonder what they're going through right now." These thoughts make me feel compassion rather than anger. One thing to note is that you can start anywhere on the model. You don't always have to start by putting what your circumstance is. When I first started doing models, I often started with the feeling line because often it was easier for me to figure out what I was feeling than any other line on the model. So in this example, probably the first thing I would have noticed after seeing that his jobs weren't done was anger. So I could write on that third line in the middle of the model, angry. And then I could start to fill out the rest of the model. The thought that made me feel angry was that he was so irresponsible. So I could put that in the thought line and then go up to the circumstance line that I noticed that he hadn't done his job. It's easy to find your result after you write all the actions you take from the feeling of anger, and then you can see what you're creating in your life, which is your result line. So sometimes it's fun to start on the last line of your model, which is where you put the result you're creating in your life because of the thought you're thinking. So I'll give you an example. I've wanted to stick with an exercise plan my whole life, but I've really never been able to be really consistent. I hadn't realized that the reason that I was never able to be consistent with this goal was because of the very pleasing and convincing thoughts that my primitive brain was offering me, giving me every excuse it could come up with not to exercise. The reason our brain does this is because two of the brain's main functions are to conserve energy and to seek after pleasure. Well, as you can imagine, exercise doesn't do either of these for me. So, of course, my primitive brain is trying to talk me out of exercising. When I realize that my brain is offering what I call thought errors to me so that I can be lazy and not follow through with my goal, I can look at the model backwards, because on the result line, I wrote exercise consistently, but I'm wondering, why can't I do this? So we look at the next line up. The next line up is our action line. So I write down all the actions I would need to take to be able to realize this result of wanting to exercise consistently. So on my action line, I wrote, decide which days of the week I will exercise. What exercise will I do and for how long? Look at my plan each morning. And 10 minutes before the scheduled time that I want to work out, I need to get dressed into my workout clothes. In order to take these actions, what do I need to feel so that I can be determined to follow through with this goal that I have? I look at all the sentences that might give me a feeling of determination so that I can be consistent. The list I came up with would read something like, I love when I feel strong and fit. I can do hard things. I want to be healthy for my grandkids. I'm so proud of myself when I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm committed to this goal. I want to exercise because I want to be healthy. I can pick any of these sentences and put those in the thought line and see if they will create a feeling of determination during the day so that I will follow through with my goal. Having a compelling why will help a lot on those days when it's harder to be committed to my goal. I know a lot of people say that after a period of time, they start enjoying doing something they never enjoyed before after forming a new habit and doing it consistently. But I have found that what keeps me consistent is not expecting and hoping that someday I will enjoy an activity that I have never really enjoyed very much before. What works better for me is if I can find thoughts that keep me committed, because I'm never going to probably choose exercise over watching my favorite TV series. And I've learned that it's okay if there are days that I don't really feel like doing something, because if I'm determined, I will do it anyway. At the end of a month of working out consistently, I've never said, I sure do regret keeping my promise to myself to exercise every day. I'm always so grateful for making myself and my goals a priority and being consistent in doing the things I've decided are important to me. And the only way that I can do that is to come up with those thoughts that generate the feeling to keep me determined to be consistent. Have there been times in your life when you've thought, why can't I be consistent with my goals? Or have you ever asked questions like, why did I say that? Why did I act that way? How did I end up here in my life? We can become so frustrated with ourselves when we don't act like the best version of ourselves. I remember trying over and over to change a certain behavior or change the negative feeling I had toward a certain person, and I couldn't figure out why it was so difficult to change. After doing literally hundreds of models, it's so wonderful to have those why and how questions answered. I know how easy it is to understand that it is the way I'm thinking that's creating my life. But making changes is especially hard when it's something that you've worked on and felt like you have failed at. It's hard to change our heart in some situations. It takes time and a lot of patience. This is a learning process that takes a lifetime. It often feels like as soon as I've learned a lesson, another challenge will come up and I'm learning the same lesson all over again or a similar lesson. This is the way it is, and being frustrated with ourselves never produces a positive result. Just this morning, I woke up feeling like I was falling short, not making the kind of progress I want to be making. I woke up feeling like I wasn't doing anything really well, and I felt like I should be further along and doing more than I was doing. When I did my model this morning, I could see how none of these thoughts were going to help me be productive at all. In fact, these thoughts were making me feel like I wanted to stay in bed and pull the covers over my head. I find some relief when I have eternal perspective and understand that I don't have to feel rushed and that this is just a journey. This life does not have to feel overwhelming and super heavy. It's okay when I don't always follow through with what I say I'm going to do. Sometimes I can get discouraged if I'm basing how well I'm doing on one day or even 1 week. If I'm compassionate, I will look at last year and focus on the effort I've made and see even the failures as progress, as long as I'm still trying. We can look for joy and feel gratitude every day for the opportunity this life gives us to keep learning line upon line. The model has brought me so much awareness, and this awareness is the beginning of becoming the person that I want to be. Know that you are loved, and thanks for listening. If you have a child who's struggling and would like to talk to someone, don't hesitate to reach out. To schedule a free coaching session, go to CindyAllredCoaching.com.